Have you ever wondered how some real estate investors seem to be able to scale up to bigger, more luxurious investment properties without getting slammed by taxes along the way? The truth is, it often comes down to one of the most powerful but very much underutilized tools in the IRS code, the 1031 exchange. See, if you're in Orlando and you're dealing with luxury real estate, particularly investment properties, we're talking about multi-million-dollar homes in places like Windermere, Winter Park, Lake Nona, or Reunion. And things in this price range do get a little bit more complex. The stakes are higher, the timelines are usually tighter, and the room for error is practically non-existent. That is why having a real estate agent who specializes in 1031 exchanges in Orlando's luxury market isn't just a good idea. It's pretty much essential. My name is Ben Danholm, and I am a luxury real estate marketing expert and broker owner based right here in Central Florida. I am the broker owner of Maxim Realty Orlando and Maxim LLC. And for years, I've been helping investors buy, sell, and exchange high-end properties. And today, I would like to give you a complete, clear-cut guide to how 1031 exchanges work, what the pitfalls you need to avoid are, and why working with somebody who knows this market inside and out can save you from very costly mistakes. But before we get started, for real, let me just make one thing clear. I'm not a QI or a qualified intermediary in you have the specialized companies do that. I'm not a CPA, I'm not a tax advisor. So what I'm about to tell you is pretty much common knowledge. If you look it up, you can Google most of the stuff. I'm just putting it into one video. If you want advice on the tax consequences for you and your specific situation, I'm more than happy to refer you to somebody who is an expert in whatever area you need expert advice in. I am pretty good at helping you with the real estate side of things, and I do know a lot about this, but I am not the qualified expert in terms of giving you advice, but I can give you the overview and explain how these things works from a real estate point of view. So now that we got this out of the way, let's start with the basics and then lay on a little more advanced details that matter most for luxury properties. So first of all, I think it's essential to know what is a 1031 exchange. At its core, a 1031 exchange is a rule that lets you sell one investment property and reinvest in the proceeds into another, what they call like-kind property of equal or greater value. And by doing that, you defer capital gains taxes. That is basically the 1031 exchange. And that's pretty huge because depending on your tax bracket, your gains, and your state obligations, capital gains can easily take 20 to 30% out of your profits. So being able to defer that if you're continuing your investment journey, that is pretty huge. So think of it this way. Let's say you sell a $1.2 million vacation rental near Lake Nona. You sell it outright. You have no mortgage and you paid virtually nothing for it. You could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. But if you roll all these proceeds into a $2.5 million estate in Reunion Resort using a 1031 exchange, you're deferring those taxes and keeping all of your capital working for you. And that's what makes it such a powerful wealth building tool. But, and this is pretty important, the IRS does not make this simple. But then again, what do they make simple? There are pretty strict timelines, reporting requirements, and definitions of what counts as a like-kind property. And in the luxury segment, that's one of the places where people often get a little bit tripped up. I'll get back to some of that later. But before that, let's talk about what are the costs of doing a 1031 exchange. There are a few common questions we get all the time, and that is exactly how much does it cost to do a 1031 exchange? For a pretty straightforward deal, maybe a single family rental into another rental, fees could run you probably $800 to $1,500. But luxury is a little bit different. When you're dealing with multi-million-dollar homes, and sometimes multiple replacement properties, maybe some reverse exchanges or properties that involve trust and partnerships, cost can easily run way over that $2,000 to $5,000, or maybe even more. And that's because your qualified intermediary, or your QI, which is what I mentioned before, I'm not, is doing far more than just holding the money in those cases. They are structuring timelines, they're reviewing contracts, and sometimes they are coordinating with multiple attorneys and closing officers and tax advisors. So the more people work, the more they get paid. That's generally the way it works. But here's the real takeaway of this. Don't try to cut corners on your qualifying intermediary, your QI. I have seen investors try to save thousands of dollars only to lose maybe 5 or 6 figures in tax exposure because something wasn't filed correctly or a deadline was missed. So if you can invest in a QI, a good QI, maybe $5,000 or even $10,000 for the purpose of deferring $100,000 to $200,000 in taxes, I would say it's pretty much worth it. The right 1031 exchange realtor can connect you with trusted QIs who specialize in high-end Florida transactions, so you're not having to gamble with your money. Let's talk about a few rules here. The 75% rule, and that's about financing. You may have heard about the 75% rule. It's not an IRS law or code, but it does come up often when lenders are underwriting a replacement property. The idea of this is pretty simple. Your new loan should not exceed 75% of the property's value. And why does this matter? Well, let's use an example. You're moving equity from a $1 million luxury rental into a $2 million estate rental. Under this guideline, your financing should ideally not exceed $1.5 million. And the truth is, luxury buyers, like all other buyers, often use leverage, and lenders are pretty conservative in these transactions. They want to see you put in a significant equity in there. Also because the values are higher and the risk is also higher for the lender. So having a realtor who knows this landscape and has a relationship with lenders who understand 1031 exchanges could make or break your deal. Then we have another rule that people might have heard of, the 2-year rule. That's another wrinkle, if you like. The 2-year rule comes into play if you're buying from or selling to a related party, like a family member or business partner or a family trust. The IRS says that both parties must hold on to their properties for at least 2 years, or the exchange could be disqualified. So important to know about the 2-year rule. And this is especially relevant in a luxury market like Orlando, because so many high-end properties are held in trusts or LLCs tied to family wealth. So if you're structuring your portfolio with estate planning in mind, you cannot ignore this at all. So a knowledgeable 1031 realtor will be able to help you navigate it and make sure you are not creating problems with the IRS 2-year rule down the road by connecting you with the right people who can make sure that we're meeting all deadlines or passing all deadlines, if you like. A question that often comes up is, can I buy a more expensive property than the one I have now? And this is basically what this whole video is about, but let's take it anyway. Yes, is the short answer. In fact, that is the whole point for most investors. That is to trade up and use the equity released from the cheaper property to invest in the more expensive property, rather than give the money to the IRS. So you can absolutely trade into a more expensive property. The IRS is completely fine with that, as long as you reinvest all of your proceeds and cover any difference with your own funds, which is often referred to as the boot. So as an example, picture this. You sell a 1.5 million lakefront home in, say, Windermere, and you upgrade to a $2.3 million golf course estate. I don't know where we would get that from, but maybe maybe a $3 million golf course estate in Keens Point. If you reinvest all of your sale proceeds and don't pull out any cash, you can defer your entire tax bill. And that is exactly how investors keep climbing the ladder from mid-tier properties into true luxury estates. Another rule you might have heard about is the 200% rule. And this could get a little bit technical. When you sell your property, you have 45 days to identify your replacement properties or property. Under the IRS's 200% rule, the total value of these identified properties cannot exceed 200% of the property you sold. So if you sell a $2 million property, you can identify up to $4 million worth of replacement property or properties. You can do it in different properties, but you cannot go above the 4 million. That's the 200% rule. So that could be, like I said, one $4 million mansion or several smaller upscale homes, as long as the total does not go over that limit. For luxury investors, especially, this rule matters because many like to diversify, and maybe taking one property and splitting it up into several high-end vacation rentals in maybe Lake Buena Vista or Reunion. And the 200% rule makes it possible, but you need somebody to guide you so you don't cross the line, especially if you want to go really close to the line. So when can you not use a 1031 exchange? In many cases, and this might surprise you, sometimes the best move is not to do a 1031 exchange, mostly because it's not possible. And let me explain. If you plan to use the proceeds for personal reasons, like buying your primary residence, a 1031 won't work. The IRS rules are pretty strict on this. It has to be another investment property. If the property you're selling has very little gain, or worse, if you're losing money on it, you might actually want to skip the exchange so you can use that loss for tax purposes. And if you're in a down market where values are dropping, it can sometimes make a lot more sense to realize the loss now rather than defer it. So there's one of those situations where you don't really want to use a 1031 exchange. I've also seen people get into trouble when they don't have the right team. And I'm not talking about the right realtor. That's part of it, but the right realtor that can put together the right team for you. Because remember, you have just 45 days to identify replacement properties and 180 days to close. So there are a lot of deadlines to manage in this process. So if you're not confident you can find the right property in time or the right properties in time, it might be better to wait selling the existing investment property rather than risk blowing the exchange or ending up with a big tax bill because you didn't find your replacement property. So why do I keep saying that you should work with a 1031 exchange realtor in Orlando's luxury market specifically? And this is where I really want to stress the importance of somebody who knows what they're doing. Orlando's luxury market is pretty unique. It's unlike anywhere else in Florida. And I have bought and sold properties all over the state. So I have pretty good feeling about what the market is in other parts of the state. We have a very unique blend of buyers. We have vacation home investors. We have international buyers who invest for various reasons. We have second home seekers, not a 1031 situation. And we have all sorts of different people in the mix here. And properties are also very varied. We have downtown penthouses, waterfront estates. We have townhomes, luxury townhomes. We have golf communities. There's so many different ways to invest your money around here. And that diversity really makes 1031 exchange here a lot more nuanced. So you need a realtor who can help you identify the like-kind properties that match both your financial and your lifestyle goals. And while you cannot use the property for any personal purpose while it is in a 1031 exchange, you might at some point want to take it out of the 1031 and just pay your taxes and use the property for yourself. And if that's the long-term goal, the property obviously have to also match your lifestyle goals. You also need somebody who can coordinate seamlessly with your QI, your qualified intermediary, your title company, your tax advisor, your CPA, your attorney, somebody who's used to coordinating a lot of loose ends in a transaction. And somebody who can keep you on track with the IRS's 45-day identification rule and the 180-day closing window, because those two are crucial if you want to be able to defer your taxes. Another good thing by working with somebody who is local and who is used to working this type of market is that they should be able to give you access to exclusive off-market luxury listings, or basically luxury homes that are not listings yet, homes that are not available to the general public. Gives everybody a lot more time and ease in the transaction if you can find something that's not on the market. Sorry about that. And obviously, somebody who can advise you on the best high-income areas and luxury zip codes like 34786 for Windermere, 32827 for Lake Nona, and very important 32789 for Winter Park. Winter Park has 2 zip codes, and one is definitely a lot more luxury than the other. Without that guidance, you are taking unnecessary risks. And with it, on the other hand, you're setting yourselves up for long-term wealth growth. So, a little bit of a recap to give you some sort of real-world examples of how investors use 1031 exchanges right here in Central Florida. A lot of investors use 1031 to upgrade, maybe moving from a $900,000 vacation rental in Davenport into a $2 million luxury rental in Reunion Resort. Like I said, in most cases, it's all about moving up in properties, but sometimes it's also about what others do, and that is to diversify. You sell a single $2 million estate and spread the investment across 3 or 4, maybe 5 high-end vacation rentals near Disney, which can maybe generate higher combined cash flow or maybe a more steady cash flow because you're not relying on one property, just one property. You're actually spreading, you're diversifying basically. I also worked with investors who use the 1031 exchange to exit the condo market altogether. They've sold downtown Orlando condos and moved into gated estates. Not physically moved in because these are investment properties, but they are moved into estates where maybe long-term appreciation potential were stronger, and the potential again for when they finally decide to pay their taxes, maybe have a home that they would actually want to retire in when that time comes. So lots of different reasons for using 1031 exchanges. I have not personally done a lot of this. I have done a little bit of it, but also obviously just to make sure that this is clear, 1031 exchanges also work for other investment properties. So basically what I think you gather from this video, 1031 exchange is not a one size fits all. It's a tool you, together with your advisors, can tailor to your goals, but only if you know the rules and have access to the right opportunities. So let's do a little bit of recap of some important things, because the timelines are really important. And this is the part where a lot of investors get tripped up because they miss the deadline. The 45-day deadline to really identify your replacement properties, that is one of the ones I've seen most times that people get close to missing, or even missing because they couldn't find the right property. But then again, also the 180 days to close can also be an issue, especially if the seller is a little has some issues that needs to be sorted out. But the problem is these are hard deadlines, and they're, as opposed to a normal real estate contract, there are no extensions. The IRS do not offer extensions on these deadlines. So 45 days to identify your property and 180 days to close. And that in practice means that you need to have your team lined up and your strategy in place before you even sell your current property. So you need to work with somebody who will already be looking for potential replacement properties for you, so you're not scrambling on date 44 to trying to make a rush decision. That is probably the worst you can get into. All right, I think it's about to wrap this up. Some final thoughts before I leave you. A 1031 exchange is one of the most powerful strategies in the IRS toolkits for building long-term wealth in real estate. It allows you to defer taxes. It allows you to keep your capital working for you and not the IRS. And it allows you to scale up to bigger, better properties, or to diversify into more properties when you think that time is right. But in the Orlando luxury market, stakes are a bit higher. The properties here are more expensive than so many other places. And the timelines, because of a tight market, still are a little more challenging, especially the 45-day rule. So without the right team, you are risking making a costly mistake along the way. But with the right team and the right guidance, a 1031 exchange can be your ticket to building a legacy portfolio, whether that's upgrading into lakefront estate, or maybe diversifying into multiple rentals, or maybe transitioning into something completely different than what you're doing before, from condos to single family homes, for instance. So if you're considering making a move under the 1031 rule, this is a perfect time to talk strategy. My specialty is helping investors navigate these high-end transactions and helping them get in touch with the right people so they can minimize their tax exposure as much as possible. I'm always open for a free private consultation, and I can talk to you what we can do to help you achieve your goals if you're interested. And before I go, let me leave you with this question. If you could roll your gains from your current investment property into a bigger, better luxury property here in Orlando without paying capital gains tax right now, what would that look like for you? Because that's the real power of a 1031 exchange. And that's a conversation worth having. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope to see you in the next video. Bye for now.
Hey, it's Ben Danholm, and listen, if you don't follow this channel, there's a good chance you'll never see me again. I consistently create helpful content for those who are currently in the real estate market. This information can be extremely helpful for your buying and selling needs, so be sure you like and subscribe here. And most importantly, leave a comment to let us know if this video was helpful for you. We're here to help the Central Florida community, and we always love your thoughts and questions. Follow now, and I'll see you with our next helpful video.